The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, major breaking news, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Cubitos from AEG. Then they take a look back at their review of Glen Moore II in their Dukes Double Take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
Whew, enthusiastic. And you are joining us for episode 247, which, thanks to Jimmy DM90, we are calling Blockness Monster. The Blockness Monster or just Blockness Monster?
I copied it straight from there, so I think it's just Blockness Monster.
Just Blockness Monster. Maybe we need to add the. I don't know. I'll figure that out when I do the show thumbnail. But what a fantastic title, because, of course, we're talking about Glen Moore II and our Duke's Double Take, which is in Scotland. And there's Loch Ness and Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. And then we're talking about Cubitos that are cubes, or dice, as some might call them, which are blocks, Alex.
Yes.
Did you get all that?
I did get all that. It was very layered. It was well done. It's catchy. It has all of the things we love out of a title.
Absolutely. So thanks to Jimmy DM90, like I said, we actually get help naming all of our episodes over on our Board Game Guild. That's guild number 2008. Every other week before the episode, we post our Dukes on Deck, where we ask for input about the games we're talking about and naming suggestions. So definitely go check that out and join in on all of the fun over there. And at the end of the episode, we will give you the runners-up for naming this particular episode. All right, well, let's not worry, get into like each other's lives. Let's just jump into the games, Alex.
No.
Oh, no?
No.
You have news? You have news that you didn't even reveal to me off air? You want to wait?
It was so Sean, I will say, this is something that Abby and I have been working on and working hard at for the last few months. And I am pleased to announce on the Dukes of Dice podcast that Abby and I are both vaccinated. Vaccinated.
Oh.
Yeah. Both have vaccines. What did you think I was going to say?
No, that's fine. That's fine. All our oh, was it last episode? You did the thing with me where it's like, oh, Raquel's pregnant. I'm like, nope.
No. But it was kind of a wild day to get there because I have no priority whatsoever for the vaccine. Am not in the current phase for the state. So I will tell you the story of how this occurred. St. Louis has been kind of in a weird spot in Missouri where the rest of Missouri has had kind of plentiful available doses. If you're willing to drive 2-3 hours, I could have gotten a dose a couple weeks ago, but haven't had the chance to. Been moving houses, and so now doses are opening up slowly but surely in the city of St. Louis as the Johnson & Johnson one specifically becomes more available and just manufacturing picks up. So I was set to become fully eligible April 9th. Abby has been in a higher tier based on the industry she works in, so she had her first dose scheduled for Friday. Well, I was trying to look for alternate ways to get it because I had heard, a couple friends have started to get their first doses, mostly by going an hour to 2 or 3 hours out of town. I had joined a Facebook group for the St. Louis area and just threw out a post saying, hey, I'm phase 3, nothing special, not looking to jump the line, but, if there's an opportunity, I'd be curious. And got all sorts of advice. Anything from call and get on wait lists at Walmart to here, check out this pharmacy 3 hours away from you to basically someone reaching out to me trying to use kind of a weird backdoor to possibly schedule at CVS. I don't know. It was a strange situation. In and amongst all of that, I saw a post on that group that said, hey, that big event here in St. Louis where they're giving out the dose and where Abby was scheduled to get her dose tomorrow, as of the recording of this show, they're doing them now. They're just allowing walk-ins. Apparently, they'd had such chaos earlier in the day that that folks either canceled or no-showed, and so there was room for general population. They didn't want the doses to go to waste. So, they said, first come, first served, come get your dose. I saw it in time. I drove down the 10 minutes to the place. They were sure enough still doing general population at the time. I got my shot in my arm. It took me 11 minutes from time of parking to time the shot was in my arm. And so I have my Johnson & Johnson vaccine, Sean.
So wait, when was that? That was today?
That was today, this afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So
well, congrats.
Thanks. But like from a span of posting something on Facebook, on a Facebook group at maybe 3:30 to seeing a post at maybe 4:35 to dose in arm at 4:55. I mean, it was that quick that it all happened. And then Abby drove down, and she had an appointment for the next day, but they had printed Friday, March 25th, so they had printed the day right, but the date wrong. And so she kind of had shown them that, and they're like, oh, yeah, no problem. And she got her dose. I got interviewed for local TV news here because I know one of the reporters at one of the local stations and talked about the whole thing. And I have, as of the time of this recording, I have no idea if that aired anywhere. But yeah, I am vaccinated, and a few weeks from now should be fully protected. And pretty wild. It came together a lot faster than I thought it would. And who knows what kind of side effects I'll experience. We could start experiencing some of those even during this podcast, Sean.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Did you find it exciting to be on local news? Was that like a first for you?
It felt like old hand for me. It's not a first for me because I was on local/national news when Abby and I took that early pandemic trip down to Memphis.
That's not what I'm talking. I'm just talking, and you were a news reporter. Come on, man.
I know what you meant.
Come on, man.
But it's not a new experience. Like, I'd done it. I did it last year, within a year. So, yeah. So that's going on. We both have the vaccine, and hopefully that will enable in-person game days sooner rather than later. Stoked to hopefully see my folks soon. Hopefully travel more. I hope wherever you're listening from, you either have a dose already or are close to getting yours or in line. I know being patient is hard. I always like to say patience is a virtue, and it's just one I do not possess. So, I mean, hang in there. It's been a long year plus here, but the light feels like it's very much at the end of the tunnel. Also want to jump in here on the naming thing and mention that it is Andrea Merryhugh. We had some controversy over that last week, but it is been confirmed as Andrea.
It's funny you say last week, Alex, and I'm glad we straightened that out, because tonight, before I came down, Mariah asked me, she said, "Are you guys still doing every week?" And I'm like, "What?" Because you said last week.
Yeah,
like,
I did.
No, we've been doing, it's been 4 years. And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know that." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Shows how important our podcast is in Mariah's life.
Well, I suppose. So I got my second shot of the Pfizer vaccine on Saturday. So a little under a week ago at the time of recording. Oh boy, it kicked my butt. I had zero effect from the first shot. The second shot, I felt sicker than I felt in the longest time. I mean, just brutal. So good luck to you.
Thanks.
Best wishes.
Yep.
I hear the Johnson & Johnson because it's 2 doses in one, so to speak. I mean, that's not quite right, but I don't know.
It could hit me like an absolute truck. It could do that. It could also be fine. I've seen reports that it's milder. I've seen reports that it's more intense. I will certainly report back next episode.
I agree. It will be one of those things.
It will be one of those two. It will either be milder or or more intense. It won't be equal. It definitely won't be that. Anyway. All right. Do you want to jump into games, or did you have any big breaking news in your life?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
It's just the doldrums.
Yeah. Life. All right. Well, good banter. Why don't you just kick us off with games you've been playing?
All right. So last week I talked about getting back into Warhammer 40,000. And I played my first game in 8+ years with Mariah. We played my old Thousand Sons. They're Chaos Space Marines. Do you know anything? I mean, I'm trying to remember what your knowledge of the Warhammer lore is, because you played some Warhammer games here and there, more so the fantasy related stuff than 40K, which is the shorthand for Warhammer 40,000.
So yeah, bear with me. I'm trying to think of the things that are licensed. Obviously, I know the connection with Blood Bowl. That comes from the Warhammer universe, yes?
Yes.
Okay. That might be it in terms of Warhammer games, though. What else might I have played that's Warhammer
I don't think you've
universe?
played Forbidden Stars, which is a 40K game. I don't think you ever played Warhammer 40,000 Conquest, which was the Fantasy Flight LCG.
No.
No? Okay. And then I'm trying to think, oh yeah, you played a miniatures game with me once, but that was Dust Tactics.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you what the game was. It certainly... miniatures have not been a thing I've ever gotten super into.
Yeah.
The closest I got was Mage Knight way back in the day.
Right. Well, so Warhammer 40,000 is from Games Workshop. This is the 9th edition. I started playing, I played briefly in high school in 2nd edition, and then in college really got into it with 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th edition, but I quit around 6th edition. So I missed all of 7th edition. I missed all of 8th edition. And I was in, like, this was my thing. This was my hobby. There was a little under a year where I worked at a Games Workshop store in Arizona. And then, that was like before board gaming and in between Magic, like miniature gaming was my thing. So I have a ton of painted armies, like fully painted large armies, just a ton. I've got a ton of models that are just new in box, still in shrink, because I just plan to build a bunch of stuff, but I haven't touched them. I haven't looked at them. I haven't even really thought about them in these last 8 years. And it was funny, some miniature terrain building YouTube videos popped up into my feed just by accident. And I started watching some because I used to really enjoy building terrain. Like it's a lot of fun. And I was watching these videos, and about 2 months ago, it just started kind of building that urge in me to play again. And I had mentioned before that months and months ago, Mariah had expressed an interest to try it, and we were just going to play like an old edition. But I decided, you know what? I'm going to try the new edition, bought the main rule book, bought a couple army books, and we built a bunch of terrain, got this nice new wargaming mat, because it's very weird, like very specific dimensions for the new 9th edition. That you play on. It's like 44 by 30. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, so we played our first game. It was 500 points, which is a small game. It's about 25% of a typical army size. So just enough to kind of get a feel for the game, learn some rules. I read through all of the rules, figured it out, which in some ways it was easy having played these 4 other editions, but in other ways it was really hard because you have certain expectations from prior editions which are now gone in this new 9th edition. So it's a very different game in a lot of ways. It was pretty crazy. But for those that don't know, this is a tabletop miniature game where you buy these models on sprue. Here, Alex, look, see these guys here? Some Necron warriors.
Okay.
So you buy them on sprue, you clip them out, you clean them up, you glue them together, then you prime them and you paint them, you build your army. It's kind of like in Magic, that where you're building your deck. It's very personalized. Army building, so much more so, because you have these units and you're doing these special conversions, you're painting them the way that you want. It's a very involved hobby. And then the payoff, and for a lot of people, is playing the game. And the game's a ton of fun. Mariah really enjoyed it. We've got another game scheduled tomorrow night, Friday night. We're going to play another 500-point game. She was pretty invested in it. We're kind of talking about what is your level of investment? Like, is this something you want to play like once every couple of weeks? Is this something where you want to build an army and you want me to teach you how to paint? I've had her help me paint some things, paint some of the terrain, kind of teach her some things here and there. And I told her, I'm like, look, if you are into this and if you want to do this, just if up to you, totally up to you. But if I will totally buy you an army, like we'll buy you an army. I've got all the paint. I've got all the supplies. I'll help you figure out how to do it, teach you how to paint, how to do it quickly and effectively. And there's this really cool new system in 9th edition. It's called the Crusade system. And it's this narrative campaign play where your units gain experience, get upgrades, get, special artifacts and things like that. So of course, like that's something that totally is totally up my alley, something I totally want to do. And it's something where we can start off with a small 500-point army, a couple units and like a character, and then build up, 1,000 points, 1,500 points, and then 2,000 points over several months. So yeah, Warhammer 40,000. I'm back in it, Alex.
Uh-oh. You have enough time with that and Magic?
Well, what's nice about Magic is, it's mostly online right now, at least for me. But I've never, and I mentioned this last episode, I've never really had any significant period of time where I was heavily into both. I think there was so I got back into Magic the summer before my third year of law school. So that third year of law school was the only time previously where I'd been playing both Magic a lot and Warhammer a lot and other tabletop miniatures. But then after that, it was just Magic. And then Magic went away for a while too. But I don't know. It's pretty crazy. Like, I feel like something's got to give. So you've got board games, and then you have like GMT style war games, which is almost its own separate thing. And then you've got Magic, and then you've got tabletop miniatures. Oh, by the way, I'm also probably getting back into Warhammer Fantasy, which is now called Age of Sigmar. Yeah, and you're shrugging because
I don't even know what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's Warhammer 40,000, the sci-fi, and then there's Warhammer Fantasy, which is more of a fantasy thing. And they rebooted the whole universe like 4 or 5 years ago. It's now called Age of Sigmar. So anyway, I'm not going to probably talk too much more about Warhammer throughout the podcast.
He says,
although
now.
I don't know, maybe when a new book comes out, so like the new Dark Eldar book is coming out pretty soon, the Dark Eldar Codex. Although now they're called Drukhari. They gave them like all these unique names because like Eldar and Dark Eldar and Imperial Guard, they're all just kind of generic sounding fantasy sci-fi names. So
okay.
Anyway, very excited, and I'm gonna be building some Necron warriors and some little scarab swarms while we're chatting.
All right. Well, I'm going to be watching a Blues hockey game while we're chatting, so we'll both be just a little bit distracted.
Two podcasters with one person's worth of attention to the show. Perfect.
Hey, baby, that's all we need. That's what you get when you do a show like this for more than 6 years. You can just you can put it on autopilot. Anyway.
Wow.
No, it's not true. All right. First game I'll talk about is Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta. This is a co-design, Bruno Feduti and Charlie Cleveland. Publisher listed Horrible Guild in the U.S. It's also listed as yellow on BGG, but I'm pretty sure it's Horrible Guild. Any case, this is an area control game is the best way I can describe it. Area control sort of point. I don't know how I would describe it mechanically. Anyway, it's a game where it's in the Vampire the Masquerade universe, which, Sean, this was actually one of my early gaming experiences with you, was guest starring in your game that you were GMing of Vampire the Masquerade. I was the prince of some city.
You were the Prince of Washington, D.C.
I think I did a pretty good job, if I remember correctly.
It was good. The prince is the head of a city, if it's a Camarilla city, which is one of the factions, the main overarching political factions of vampires.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So that's my experience with the game and the universe so far. This is set in that universe. You are playing different vampires, all of whom have unique decks. And this is, I would say, not a deck building game, but a hand building game, if that makes any degree of sense. How this works in the game is you will have a certain number of cards in hand per round. As you play this over 3 rounds, and as the rounds go by, you'll get 1 additional card. You'll be battling over different locations which have high-profile victims that you're trying to bring into your coven and drain of blood. Resources you have to spend are blood. So basically, you will play a card. You can play it face up or face down. Face down comes at a cost. Face up, you can just kind of play as is. And then you can add additional blood up to 3 to kind of increase your strength in the area. If you win the area, you win the associated person, which usually comes with a special ability and points. There are 3 different areas you can win, at least in the size of game we were playing. I think in larger player count games, it would have been slightly different. So that's the kind of core mechanic of it. As you compare strength, or as cards are played, there will be all sorts of wacky effects. So you might have one that cancels out someone's card, or you might have one that forces anyone who plays at a location other than that location to pay a blood cost. Blood is important because it's a resource for money, buying cards, buying influence, things like that. But it's also important in that if you ever run completely out of it, you go into a frenzy and you randomly eat one of your cards. Basically turn that card into blood and usually costing you some amount of points. Yeah, as the game goes on, you'll get access to more and more cards, but you'll see the same card, so you'll have a sense of kind of what your opponents are working with, plus some sort of mystery card as the game goes on. Plays super fast. It's listed at 30 minutes. I'd say with Teach, it took us maybe 45 to 55. It's in that ballpark. It's really nice little area control game. The decks are all constructed in unique ways. The abilities that you get from acquiring the different people are interesting, and trying to gamble, not spread yourself too thin, not try and go for too many different locations, but still trying to win as many of those victims as possible to get points. Trying to force people into a frenzy. There can be a little bit of a take that element at times to the game. But yeah, really enjoyed it. It's getting decent reviews, 7.5 on BGG, and I can see why. It's Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta, short game with a decent amount of depth.
Do you think I'd like it?
I think you would like it, yeah, because it has enough kind of take that type of depth. The decisions are still interesting. It's a theme that I already know you like. It's a universe you've been in before. It's not, it's more filler length, especially when everyone knows what they're doing. And I think you'd have a lot of satisfying moments in this game, yeah.
How many different decks are there?
I don't know offhand. I know the game plays up to 5 or up to 6 players, so at least 6. But I think significantly, it could be even more than that.
And I'm assuming that the decks, are they different clans?
They are different clans, yes.
Do you know which clans?
No, I don't have the game box here with me. I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ventrue? Do they have Ventrue at least?
Sure. I promise you, Sean, they absolutely have Ventrue.
Toreador?
Yep, 100%.
Gangrel?
No, not that one.
The Bruja?
Maybe. I wasn't sure about that one.
The Malkavians?
Definitely.
Okay, I'll stop. I'm just curious which clans they have.
I don't know. Look it up. Look it up yourself. Do your own research. I don't know.
You're the one telling our listeners about this game.
I played the game once. I'm not doing a featured review on this thing right now. I'm just talking about the game, man. Cut me some slack. All right. So anyway, that's Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta. Back over to you, Sean.
Oh boy. I kind of feel bad for our listeners right now. So
I always feel a little bad for our listeners.
I got in another new play couple Sundays ago. We met early morning before Empire opened, masked play, and we played a new 18xx game. Not new, but new to us, or at least new to me. This is one I actually backed on Kickstarter. It's actually 2 18xx games in one. It's 1861 Railways of the Russian Empire, and it's 1867 something about Canada, Canadian Railways or Railways of Canada or something like that. And, I've talked about 18xx games on the show a couple times before. It's kind of boring to non-18xx gamers to be like, here's how this is slightly different than these other 7 18xx games. But this was pretty interesting. So in 18xx, you are an investor in these railroads in the 1800s, and you are buying stocks in different railroad companies. And if you have control, you're going to get control of that company, and you're going to be able to buy trains, build railways, and you're trying to connect certain routes to score a bunch of money that either then gets paid out to the shareholders, gets withheld by the company, or some sort of 50-50 arrangement, so that you can then buy more stock and start new companies and do all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of the core of all of the 18xx games. Now, where this game was different is that at the start of the game, there are no major railway companies. There are only these minor companies. So certain games, you'll have these minor companies and you'll have major companies, and you can own a certain number of minors and then you invest in the majors. But this game starts off with only minor companies, and they're limited in what they can do and how many trains they can have. But what can happen is you can either merge some of these minor companies together, either your own minor companies, or I can, you and I, Alex, can choose to merge minor companies, or you could eventually upgrade these minor companies into major companies. But there's also an element where the Russian Empire starts gobbling up some of the minor companies, which is pretty interesting, pretty thematic. Basically, if something happens, there's this thing called rusting, where as you buy newer trains, older trains become obsolete, and we call it rusted. And so if you have a minor company and at the end of a round, it's basically lost its train due to rusting, if you're unable to buy a train, then it gets gobbled up by the Russian Empire and it's become part of the state railway line. And at that point you get paid out for your stock value, but I mean, it's bad. It's not necessarily ideal. It was pretty interesting. I don't want to go too much more into it. I really, not a beginner 18xx game, by the way, but definitely fun. I definitely think people should get outside their wheelhouse, their comfort zone, and try an 18xx game because they are a lot of fun. They take a long time. That's just kind of baked into the cake, but it's definitely worthwhile. I think you would value, and I've said this the last time we talked about one, but I think you would enjoy one, and it would be the kind of experience where you'd be like, I'm glad I did that. It's not the kind of thing I want to do all the time. Kind of like Indonesia from Splotter.
Okay. Yeah. That seems fair enough. I'd be willing to try one.
Yeah. There are certain aspects of it you would really like. And then there's around the 4-hour mark, you'd get a little irritable.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. A little bit lengthy for my taste, but every now and then, right. and especially re-embracing in-person gaming, I would take that at this point. So,
sure. All right. Well, that is 1861 Railways of the Russian Empire.
Very cool. Well, Sean, I am going to do my best to talk about one of the weirdest games I've played in a very long time. Weirdest games. This is a game called Shasn. It is listed on BGG having a publisher of Mimesis Culture Lab. This is a Kickstarter project that has fulfilled, or is in the process of fulfilling, designer Zain Memon, artist by Sumik Lahiri. So this is a political, gerrymandering-focused area control game. The theme of the game, at its core, is athematic, but it becomes incredibly thematic because you will play with different sets of questions. And I'll explain what that is a little bit more, but it's the same map for all of these. You have maps that have, say, 11 spaces or 21 spaces or whatever else, and then you have pegs that represent your voters. You'll also be getting resources, which loosely represent different types of things. So they could be trust, is example as a resource, or confidence, or things along those lines. But there are 4 different colors of resources. You have different themes. So in the game copy that we had available, you could play the future, which is the one that we ended up playing. You could play modern day US, modern day India, modern day Great Britain, or ancient Rome. So those were the different scenarios you would have. You are representing a politician in this game, and your objective is to win the election. The game will end when every single space on the board has a majority. So once there's a majority everywhere, then you will immediately, game ends, hard stop, you will go to final scoring, and then you'll get points for the majority. So if I have the majority in this area that is 11 spaces and I have at least 6, then I will get 6 points at the end of the game, regardless of how complete or filled in I have this. The core of this game, Sean, it's an engine builder. At the start of each round, the player ahead of you will bring up a political topic that's come up and ask you a question. And how does your politician respond to this? So given that this was the future, I'm trying to think of an example from this one. Oh, yeah, okay. Should companies be allowed to grow lab-grown rent-a-babies to give new parents the experience of raising a newborn before they actually have a kid of their own? That's the question. And
is this something you're making up on the spot?
No.
Or is this...
No.
Okay.
This is what the game provided as a question. And that was not anywhere close to the most bonkers question we had in this game, Sean. And I would say some of these get pretty risque, and the cards have categorizations warning on some of those things. So if, it's a political game and it asks political questions, So just be clear if you're going to play this, you have the right game group for something like that. But yeah, that's what it would ask. And then it would then pose to you, Sean. Yes, I think, all parents having an experience would make sense. We can print the baby super cheap. Why not do it? And it's usually some extreme version of the position, or no, this is an affront to God, and it just both answers are as extreme as they get, and sometimes extreme enough to where you can feel a little bit uncomfortable answering a certain way. Why this becomes important is because each of these answers represents one of the 4 archetypes. There's the Supremo, which is kind of the dictator type. There's the showstopper. There's one that's, I think, more empathetic. And then there's the capitalist. And you're sort of in your mind trying to figure out which of these answers corresponds to what you need. Because this is a game that encourages you to get strong in a category. The more of cards you have of one type, the better you do. So, that might mean you might answer truthfully in the early part of the game. Oh, no, that sounds outrageous to me. Of course I don't want Rent-A-Babies. But as the game goes on, you might say, well, the Rent-A-Babies thing, I'm really strong in capitalist, and yes, probably would be a capitalist answer. So my politician's going to say yes, because that's going to get me more powers as the game goes on. So you start out answering genuinely, and then you start answering questions in a way that are maybe completely inconsistent with your own morality or worldview, but just to kind of build up your engine. So that's one of the interesting things at the core of this, because it has this weird party game vibe, but it is very much like this is a weight rating of a 3 on BGG, because the rest of the game involves gerrymandering. If you have a majority in an area, you can move voters from one district to another, basically. So adjusting majorities and shifting power. There are cards you can buy that are effectively, you can keep them secret and then play them on other players at certain times. One of them that I had meant anytime someone used resources to influence voters and add them onto the map, I got one of the resources they used. There was another one that said your voters get terribly homesick, so when they get moved, the next 3 that get moved just immediately get removed from the board instead of moving to the new zone. So that's going on. You have certain areas on the board that are locked in. The voters, once they're there, cannot leave. They're called unstable regions. When you go there, it's usually a really bad thing. It could be a neutral thing, but more often than not, it's a bad thing for you. And that card has some sort of effect that might affect all players, might affect just you. And that's the gist of it, Sean. You have these gerrymandering abilities. You have these abilities that stack up as you gain influence in certain areas. It's this odd political sort of party game. It was interesting. I played this with Joe from Stonemeyer and a couple other folks. And Joe, I believe, had mentioned that it was interesting to him in that it sort of replicates what being a politician is like. That it replicates this sort of, I need to do whatever's best for me and best for my game, regardless of whether it's a good idea for the people. It's a super. I cannot express how interesting this game is. The box is gorgeous. I don't know how available or accessible it is, but if you have a chance to try this and any of that sounded interesting, political area control game, give this one a look, because it's, again, beautifully produced and one of the more unusual, interesting play experiences I've had. Just make sure you're playing with the right group. So that's Shasn.
Would I like it? It sounds.
I think you would actually love it.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
I think there's a good chance you would love it. I think what might frustrate you, I don't know. No, even that wouldn't frustrate you, because there's something kind of cool in that mechanic of trying to figure out which of the 4 archetypes something pairs to. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's a little bit more nuanced, and you just have to kind of guess whatever's closest. But no, the manipulation and the one thing I would say, Sean, is it's listed at 90 to 120 minutes. It's on the longer side for a game that I like to play. It's right in your wheelhouse, but no, if you can find a copy of it, Sean, I think you would find this interesting with a lot of the folks in Albuquerque.
Huh. Okay. I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, that's Shasn. And that's the last game we're talking about. So after the break, our featured review of Cubitos.
Well, we talked a lot the last couple episodes about the Freedom 5 Kickstarter that was up from our friends over at arcanewonders.com. And shucks, wouldn't you know it, the campaign is over. A very successful campaign. They had almost $1 million in pledges, $944,247 Oh my goodness, that's so much money. Now, don't fret though, because if you didn't back in time, you can still do a late pledge. You can get the Citizen Pledge for $49. You can do the Hero Pledge, which is for the Kickstarter exclusive edition, for $109. So head on over to freedom5game.com. That's freedom5, F-I-V-E, game.com. That'll send you over to their late pledge site where you can take a look at all the different options for getting in a late pledge. Not sure how long this is going to be up and running for, so I would say hurry, act now. Definitely check it out. That's freedom5game.com. Additionally, check out all of Arcane Wonders' other awesome titles at arcanewonders.com. All right, go check it out.
Sean,
why do all our ads have to stop, or start rather? Why do all of our ads have to start with one of us saying the other person's name? Alex! Do people not know what they're listening to? And do they not recognize how distinct your voice is from my voice?
Well, Alex, I think that we're completely distinct as human beings and individuals.
I agree. For example, Sean, which is you, not me, you have a very lovely game topper, do you not?
I do, in fact, Alex, have a wonderful game topper. I enjoy it so very much. It's something where I don't have to have a full-on, all-purpose, all-the-time game table. I can have a game table when I want a game table and have a normal table when I don't want a game table.
So, Sean, I hear that, well, shoot, the Kickstarter's over, right? The Kickstarter's been over for 6 months? How on earth can I get my own game topper, Sean?
Well, Alex, it turns out it's not too late. You can go to Game Topper's website at gametoppersllc.com, and there are still some toppers you can get. Some of the packages have already sold out, but there's still some things out there. You get a Baker Street bundle. You can get some of their amazing thematic game mats. Sean, I got a little secret for you.
Is the secret...
Wait, no, Alex, I have a secret for
Sean,
you.
Based on this fact that our buddy Berkey is a very industrious fellow?
It is, in fact, Alex, that our friend Perky is a very industrious fellow. And keep your ears peeled, Alex. There's another Kickstarter coming later in 2021.
Should I keep them peeled or should I keep my ears to the ground?
You should keep them somewhere where they're going to be able to hear this news.
Okay, fair enough. Well, if you want to learn more about Game Toppers and the awesome products that they have, you should head on over to GameToppersLLC.com.
It's always a showstopper when you're playing on a Game Topper. When I was a kid, I loved an old TV show called The Wacky Races. Dick Dastardly and all sorts of random racers doing their best to get across the finish line first and avoid all sorts of schemes. You had no idea who was going to win, who was going to come out on top, and it was just insanity. Well, now comes along a game that is a race game, is completely wacky, but does it live up to the fun nostalgia, or is this just a frustrating wreck of a game? We'll tell you, it's Cubitos.
No, Alex, I feel like we probably should have just reviewed the Wacky Races board game that came out like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I know. I know that thing exists. I haven't... This isn't anything against CMON. For whatever reason, I haven't played a CMON game of any kind in quite some time. Yeah.
Oh my.
Nothing against CMON. It's just, I don't know. Anyway.
All right.
Anyway. But I don't think I'm wrong here. Wacky Races, the board game, is not a bad descriptor for this one.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Except there's no cars, but that's fine.
No, they're just cube animals.
They're cubes. Yeah, they're little cube people things. So Cubitos, this is from AEG, designed by John D. Clare, art by Jackie Davis, Philip Glofcheski, and Ryan Eiler, I think is how you pronounce it.
By the way, John D. Clare, not to be confused with his good friend John E. Clare.
You've made this joke multiple times.
Have I?
So, yeah, yes. Every time that we've talked about a John D. Clare game,
every time I hear his name, that comes into my head. I don't know why.
Custard.
Maybe. I do love a good custard. We won a couple weekends ago. It's pretty good. Anyway.
Anyway, in Cubitos, players take on the role of participants in the annual Cube Cup, a race of strategy and luck to determine the Cubitos champion. Each player has a runner on the racetrack and a support team, which is represented by all the dice you roll. Each turn you roll dice and use their results to move along the racetrack, buy new dice, and use abilities. But you must be careful not to push your luck rolling too much, or you could bust. And yeah, that's what this is, Alex. This is a dice rolling, racing, push your luck game. That's exactly what it is. So there are 4 different maps. You have 2 boards, double-sided, and they each have their own racetrack with various obstacles. There's like water. There's like teleporter things. There's these little rocket pack stations that can increase your movement. There are spots that are going to let you thin your pool of dice. There are spots that are going to give you advancements on your, I think it's called the fan track, all sorts of things. But there's obviously a most direct way from the start to the finish. So you can take that most direct way, or you can kind of stop and get some benefits along as you do, but it takes a little bit longer. So what's going to happen is you're going to have essentially simultaneous turns. There's sometimes you may want to have players go in order, but essentially you're doing things at the same time. First, you're doing the roll phase, and then you're doing the run phase. So you have your character on the racetrack in the start space, and then you and all of the other opponents are going to roll 9 dice. You have 7 light gray dice, and you have 2 dark gray dice. On the light gray dice, there is one side that shows 1 coin, one money that you can use to buy something. All of the other sides are completely blank. On the dark gray die, you're going to have one face that has the 1 coin, and then you're going to have one face that has a little paw print or footprint rather, which is what represents movement in the game, moving your space forward or your piece forward on the racetrack. And that's it. The other 4 sides are blank. So during the roll phase, you're going to take all of your 9 dice, or really it's how many you're allowed to draw. At the start of the game, it's 9. And you're going to roll all of them. Any that are hits, in other words, they have something on their face, they get moved over to your active dice section. And then you have an option to either keep rolling all of the blanks or to stop. Now, you can bust anytime that you have at least 3 active dice and all of the recently rolled dice are now blanks. You have busted and you're essentially done. You get some sort of consolation prize. You get to move up on this fan track, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's it. And busting is not a good thing because you're foregoing buying things, you're foregoing getting to move your character. So you really don't want to do that. But ultimately, let's say that you judiciously choose when to stop rolling. And now you have a pool of active dice that are giving you some amount of movement. They're giving you some amount of purchase power, and you're gonna spend those. You're gonna move along the racetrack as you want, getting bonuses as you do. You're gonna pool this money to make purchases. Now, be aware that this money goes away at the end of the round, so it's either spend it or lose it. Now, you're gonna add new dice to your pool. There are 8 different colored dice that are available to you, and each one of them has different facings. Most of them are 2 faces. Some of them are just 1, and I think there's one that has 3 faces.
Yeah, at least one. Yeah.
Yeah. And every game, you're going to have different dice powers for each of these colors. If I recall, I think it's 7 different powers for each color that you can randomize. It gives you, what's nice is it gives you some preset cards that work well together. But if you want to shuffle them up and deal them out, you can totally do that. And so you're able, when you're making a purchase, to buy up to 2 dice. They have to be of different colors. Some of them are going to cost $2. Some of them are going to cost $7. Some of them are going to cost $12. It just depends on how powerful that particular die is. Once you buy that die, it's going to go into your discard. And then at the start of the next round, you're going to, again, draw back up to 9. Although eventually, if you have too many dice, you're not going to be able to draw all of them. And so you have to kind of decide what you're pulling over and what you're not. Now, on these new dice, some of them are going to have money. Like the brown die has a $3 side, which is pretty sweet. Some of them are going to have movement, And then all of them have a special symbol that triggers the special ability on that particular card that defines what that dice does. And these abilities are wide ranging. So, for example, there's the blue llama dice. There's one version of the llama that gives you, when you roll the special symbol, it gives you 2 movement, which can be spent on going on the water. Normally, you can't go on the water, but the llama can let you do it if you roll correctly. There are some that will they might give you money, but you have like a large amount of money, but you have to return it. There's a lot of the dinosaur ones give you a ton of movement, but it's variable. There was one version we played where it gives you 2 movement, but if you have an active green dice as well, it gives you an extra 2 movement, and then an active red gives you a 5th point of movement. And I may have the colors wrong, but that's basically it. There's a ton of different options here. And it's you making the decision of which dice am I drawing? Am I pushing my luck? How am I spending these things? And how am I navigating this racetrack? Am I taking the fastest inner route? Or am I kind of picking up some stuff along the way? Am I thinning my pool of dice? Now, I mentioned that there's also this fan track. So as you move up the fan track, usually as a consolation for busting, although sometimes there are some cards in the mix that will also let you advance on the fan track if you meet certain conditions. The fan track, as you move up, may give you credit. Credit are actual tokens of money that you can keep from round to round, which can be really useful. And they'll also give you these little +1 hand icons, which means you increase the draw value when you're drawing dice into your roll pool at the start of the round. And then again, there's also other abilities that will trigger off of where you are on the flag track. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is get to the end first, get to the finish line first. If you cross the finish line at the end of that round, no one else has crossed, you win. If you finish and someone else finishes too, it's whoever gets farthest along is the tiebreaker. But that is essentially Cubitos. That's how you play it. Alex, what do you think? What were your initial expectations for Cubitos?
So for John D. Clare, not John E. Clare, John D. Clare, just want to make that clear again. It's a mixed bag in terms of enjoying his games. Mystic Vale, I liked, didn't love. Edge of Darkness, I thought was a nice evolution on that. And then Space Base, I just outright didn't like. It's based off of a whole game system that I think neither of us really particularly like. Although, based on the following for that game, I think we're in the minority on that one. So I wasn't really sure about this going in. I know AEG tends to publish some nice accessible titles, and it had an interesting look to it. I will say when I went and picked this one up from Miniature Market, Sean, and I saw the bizarre Lederhosen wearing SpongeBob SquarePants but cheese on the cover, and we'll talk about art and components obviously extensively, but my impression was, what on earth is going on with this game? So that was it. Kind of a mixed bag of a designer in my experience, and then you had that with a funky cover. More good than bad in terms of expectations, but still some questions. What about you?
Oh yeah, the cover was a huge turnoff. I mean, I had seen it on Empire's shelf for weeks, and just huge turnoff. Like I saw John D. Clare, I'm like, oh, cool, okay. But no, like it is a weird cover, and I even remember looking at the back and thinking, no, I'm good. I don't need to play this, I don't think. So yeah, this was definitely something where, and I don't know, maybe just because I'm an old grump now, but I don't know. It didn't look appealing to me. Certainly the John D. Clare design pedigree piqued my interest some, but I don't think I would have looked to play this had we not decided to review it.
Yeah, interesting. So rulebook, and I will say at the outset of this entire review that I think for the most part the things that didn't go well for me with Cubitos were almost exclusively my fault, from either not reading the rulebook closely enough or just not thinking critically or whatever the case is. Almost universally things that I screwed up on and ultimately don't play much of a bearing in my score for the game. but I feel it's important to point out up front. So, rulebook, I did not learn this game from the rulebook. I learned this one playing it online, and it was the wonderful Suzanne Sheldon, my unofficial big sis, who taught a group of us the game online. So that's how I learned it. Sean, did you learn this one from the rulebook?
By the way, happy birthday, Suze. It's her
happy birthday,
today.
Suze. Yeah, day we're recording is her birthday. So, yeah.
I learned from the rulebook. I picked it up. I read it. I thought it was pretty straightforward. This was another occasion where Raquel was, she was showering, getting ready, whatever, not to go anywhere, just. And so I'm like, okay, I'll set it up and I'll read the rules. And yeah, it was no problem. The only thing with the initial setup, I guess it's more art and components. So I'll hold off on that. But no, I thought it was a pretty solid rule book. They give you explanations for some of the abilities in the back, for all of the explanations in the back. And I thought that was definitely helpful. So I thought it was a pretty solid rule book.
Yeah, I don't know if this belongs rule book or not, but I will say the abilities on the cards weren't always as clear as the explanations in the rule book. So if you go to the appendix for the cards, it's super clear what's going on. But as written on the cards, not always entirely clear. And certainly getting into this game, I had things that I outright taught wrong. I'll mention one with the red ones, the crab or lobster ones. Those tend.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah,
I know what you're going to say.
Oh, maybe. Okay. They tend to compare against each other. So in a round, if I've rolled, say, one of these and you've rolled two, you'll get the ability and then lose one of the dice, and then the dice for me is basically not worth anything. At least, probably not worth anything. So these tend to be pretty powerful abilities, but it says on there that you compare based on zone. And I had zone in my head also based on the board itself is divided into, depending on which board you have, there are 4, but all of them are divided into different zones that serve as a catch-up mechanic for the most part. And so, yeah, I confused those zones with the active zone that's referenced. And so my thought was, oh, well, they're not in the same zone, so I guess we both get to trigger it. And not the case, not how it actually plays. It's based on how many you've rolled. They're referring to dice in your active zone that have rolled that symbol. It's just not stated as cleanly, maybe, as I would like. So got confused, figured it out the next game. It's probably, again, as I said at the outset of this review, things that that went wrong were almost universally my fault. There's another one coming up in Art and Components that very much fits the bill for this. So,
oh boy.
But by and large, and I didn't play with all 7 sets of cards, by and large, the rulebook is well structured, has good examples, easy enough to learn. What was the thing you thought I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say that you lose the red die no matter what.
Oh.
So basically, if you have the most red dice, you get the effect. No one else gets the effect. Also, ties are broken by first player.
Right. For some of them don't have a tiebreaker.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. And then you have to give up a red die. And so I thought for a second maybe everyone gives up a red die, but no, it's only if you're the actual winner.
Oh, no. That never confused me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're the only one who activates the ability or uses the ability.
Right. Yeah, I thought that for like half a second. I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, this makes more sense.
There was also some confusion I ran into when there were multiple abilities on a card. If you activate one, do you have to activate the second one? Do you pick?
Right.
How does that work? I think we figured it out, but again, there are little moments like that, and because of the complexity of 56 different card abilities that you potentially have that all function in really interesting ways, it's a bit of a lift, and they mostly do a great job, and it wasn't perfect, so wasn't perfectly smooth, but I don't think it's the fault of the rule book or anyone else. So yeah, that's a rule. Art and components, and Sean, we both agree. Yeah, this box, I did not like the box cover. I think it's a really fascinating, interesting character that they've featured there. And generally, I don't dislike the art. I will say I specifically didn't like the dog art. I thought that wasn't great. But aside from the cover, art was fine. It wasn't a runaway hit. It wasn't a bad thing. It certainly wasn't anything that held the game back. Any broader thoughts on the art before we talk about components?
Yeah, I think the art was decent. Again, not necessarily the box art, but it's kind of like a very cartoony, almost a little trippy style of art as far as the card art. I thought that the art on the boards was really nice. Like, it was very colorful and vibrant, but also very serviceable, very functional racetrack. I thought that was pretty solid. So yeah, I think overall the art, again, with the exception of the board, of the box, was pretty decent.
So here is part 2 of things that are absolutely not this game's fault.
Oh boy.
I got real confused with assembling those boxes at first, Sean. So all of these little boxes that the game comes with, they provide a little platform to kind of store components, and then you can store the components inside the cubes themselves. And those cubes effectively make up, but it's not an insert, but it effectively makes up an insert. It fills the bottom layer of the box when you have all of these cubes built and ready to go. I, for the life of me, couldn't figure it out. Abby figured it out just about immediately. And by the way, it turns out there's a great explanation of how this all works in the back of the rulebook that I just didn't see until afterward. It worked out. I would say some of those boxes got maybe a little bit wonkier than they might ordinarily be because of my poor initial assembly attempts. But again, not the game's fault. And broadly speaking, I thought that was really cool. Really cool built-in storage solution, fit with the theme of the game. Stores the cubes really well. They're all well labeled. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. Is there something there component-wise that stuck out for you, Sean?
Yeah, I like it as well too. I would have liked, so what's interesting is the cubes, they're basically tuck boxes, right? And like you mentioned, there's you can unfold the tuck box to store the things in, when you're putting the game away. But then you flip it over and there's this little well that's a little caddy for you to hold the dice in during play. I would have liked the well slightly deeper. Like,
yes.
I mean, we're talking like a centimeter, not even a centimeter, like probably half a centimeter. But I think it really made a difference. The only other weird thing, everything stores really well in these little tuck boxes when you're all done, except for the box with the gray dice. I don't know if you had this problem or if it was just my particular box, but because there's so much more gray dice, there's 9 times 4, 36.
I think there's even a few extras beyond that.
Yeah, I think there's a few extras. Yeah. It would not, it kept coming undone.
Huh.
The little tab kept coming out because it was just too heavy. Not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. Maybe it needs a little tape or a little glue or something. But yeah, again, not a huge deal. But no, I think the components were really solid. I really like the player mat that you have because it shows you your 4 zones. You've got your I think it's ready zone. I can't remember what the first one is, but then it's your draw, your roll, your active, and then your discard. And so that was pretty clear. No, I think component-wise, I think it was a pretty solid success. I think that the colors of the dice were distinct enough. You never have that moment where it's like, oh, here's yellow and a yellowish orange and then a beigeish yellow. You don't have that problem. Very, very distinct. The only issue with the components that I would probably have is it's hard at first to, depending where you're sitting, to see all of the cards the way they have you like lay it out around the track. I don't know that there's necessarily a better way, but after a couple rounds, I've kind of memorized what the cards for that game do.
Sure.
And I found it less of an issue. So not a huge factor.
It can be a table hog-ish. I mean, you have some flexibility with where you put those. I put them in kind of 2 rows of 4 was how I set that up. So
okay.
I think there's different ways you can approach that. No, but by and large, I think it's a huge win, and I love how thoroughly they integrate the cube theme. And you already called this out, but the board iconography is crystal clear, really easy to use, really easy to understand. And by the way, I love that there's 4 of them. There's 4 different tracks that operate in different ways and would combine. You could use the same set of abilities, and your priority for what abilities you would grab would completely change based on what cards were available, what mix you would have in there. So Yeah. Really, really well done, I think, on the components as a whole, even though the art at times had issues for me. Gameplay, Sean.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. This is definitely a lighter game. And but I really dug it. Raquel really dug it. It's just very satisfying. It was a very satisfying game. You know, I love dice rollers. I love push your luck. I love pool building, whether it's deck building, whether it's bag building, whether it's dice pool building, whatever. I mean, it's got a lot of things that I like. Racing is probably one of my less favorite aspects, but no, I mean, I think this was really solid. There was some interesting strategy, but of course, at the end of the day, it's a dice game. You're at the mercy of what you roll. You know, there would be a roll where I had like 7 dice left, and 4 of them were the basic gray dice. One of them had 3 sides. One of them had 2 sides, and whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, like I'm 90% to not bust, and you bust. All right, well, what can you do? And that's a little bit frustrating, but it's also a quick enough game. I'm trying to think. Our games took 45 minutes?
Yeah.
An hour?
I think once you have them set up, it would be 45 or less.
Right. And we also played back-to-back games on a couple occasions.
Yeah.
Because they were quick enough and they were enjoyable enough.
Once you have the dice out on the table, you just have to change out the abilities and you're golden.
Right. Change out the abilities, maybe change out the track, and yeah, you're good to go. So, no, I was a big fan of this game. So I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed this game.
What I love, Sean, is it's not a straightforward race, right? It's not how many spaces can you move down the track? Okay, you move 5, you move 3. All right, well, so be it. This is one where you absolutely can take different paths and different approaches. You can take that straightforward path. You can also take the path of moving into the corner and thinning your deck as much as possible and acquiring things and trying to set up for a big combo for a huge comeback later in the race. But if you wait too long, much like with a lot of engine builders, if you wait too long to crank the engine, someone might already finish the race. So you have to time things out really well. But it encourages you to seek out those combos, to do what you can to mitigate luck. And usually the green dice provide some sort of mitigation. So it's not completely, it has a lot of luck to it, but it's not completely luck-based. And much like something like Quacks of Quedlinburg, the choices are for the most part yours. You got to be careful about what you're doing. I will say another huge success of this game, Sean, is that you can do so many things simultaneously, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can roll and re-roll and re-roll and whatever and bust, and save for maybe late in the game or at different phases, it just doesn't really matter. So I enjoyed that was simultaneous. You could resolve abilities simultaneously. I mean, effectively, you can play just about all of this game at the same time without kind of taking the typical turn-by-turn approach. And that leads to a really smooth experience that would scale really well. I've played this at 4 online and played it at 2 multiple times with Abby. And it worked well at all of those counts. And I honestly would have no issue playing with the full 4 versus the 2. Slight differences, right? But not anything crazy.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the balance of the strategy and the tactics, right? You've got the tactics of, okay, what did I just roll? What am I trying to do? What spaces and bonuses are nearby? And also, where am I in relation to the other players, right? Those are all things you got to take into consideration. But you definitely can look at the available cards, look at the layout of the board, and at the start of the game say, this is the strategy I think I want to try. And of course, that's going to be subject to, getting the right dice rolls, getting enough money to buy the things you want. But like there was one game, so I mentioned that the purple dinosaur dice, where it gives you on one face, only one face, it gives you move 2 or move a 3rd if you've got an extra active die of a different color, whatever it is, green or whatever. And then another 2 movement if you have an extra active die of red or whatever. And so it takes some work to set that up. you need to not only have bought those other dice, there could come a point where, your draw limit is 10 and you've got 15, 18 dice in the pool. And the way things kind of cycle, you may not see the purple and the red together at the same time, unless you're actively making that happen, right? A lot of times you're saying, oh, I want to take my best dice every round. But sometimes I'm like, I'm going to leave this one back for next round because the purple is going to come back around. And so I had one game where I set up this turn where I was more than a third of the way from the finish. And I had spent all of this time setting up to get 2 purple dice, 2 dice of the other color, and 2 dice of the other color in my pool. And I made it happen. I got them all active, and I got a total of like 15 movements.
Yowza.
And I was trailing. Like I was significantly trailing because I was sacrificing turns to set this up, including things like intentionally busting because there were certain benefits to the cards that were out where I'd wanted to be higher on the flag track. And knowing that it would give me an increased draw, all sorts of stuff. And Raquel was like almost about to win. She was probably like 8 away or something. And she was going to move like 4 or 5 that turn, but boom, 15. And that was it. And that felt good. And obviously I could take all that time, set it up and just fail. That's certainly possible. But it was a fun moment. Like it was really rewarding, to set all that up. But at the same time, you take all that time to set it up. You talk about that game of Blood Bowl we played where I'm like 1.5% to win on this one die roll. Or I'm sorry, I'm like 98.5% chance to win. And I roll triple skulls, Well, I took all this time to set that up and it's certainly frustrating in the moment, but it makes for, a funny story and a funny moment to look back on. So this game does a lot of things right.
I would say too, Sean. Yeah, I mean the satisfying combos and the building up for that big turn is another thing that it does really well, because it either allows you or forces you to keep good or bad dice in your pool. So thinning your deck or your dice pool, I should say, is well worth doing in some cases. But Abby built up a whole strategy in one of our games of this where she was drawing 14, 15 dice every time, just based on how she had manipulated the fan track and where she was on the track. And that was enough to just overwhelm me with movement and nip me at the line. So, yeah, it does a ton of things right. And it pulls on the levers in ways you don't expect. That fan track is there as a bust mechanic, but it's also there if you move up high enough for, say, one of the red abilities, you can use it as movement, a ton of movement. So, yeah, I love how it kind of mixes the different levers. It all kind of clicks in well together, and it just comes together so beautifully. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Sean. It has luck in it, but it doesn't feel... When you do bust, when you're not trying to, which sounds like there were some times where you were trying to, it's not always a super feel bad moment. And in fact, I found more often than not, I didn't, busting wasn't the reason someone won or lost a game of this. I'm sure it can happen, but it just wasn't, it didn't play a factor. Strategy and building up the right combo and making a satisfying engine is really what the thing was. And it still feels interactive and like a race, even though you're really not, for the most part, interacting with folks other than, say, the red dice comparisons for the most part.
Right. So I would say that my first play of it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you roll some dice, you move things around. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. Like, this is a pretty decent game. Sure, why not? But as I played more, I found there to be just so many meaningful decisions that I didn't even consider in my first play of it. There's really a ton of decision making for what is a pretty light and simple game. Like I said, trying to kind of phase the certain colors of dice through together so they're in the right combination. Because again, there are in certain sets of cards, there are certain dice that care about other dice being active, or maybe it's not even that, but you're trying to get a good turn with a ton of movement. There's some turns where you don't move at all. There's some turns where you move 2 or 3. And then eventually you're setting up these bigger turns. But but ultimately, I felt like there were so many meaningful decision-making points throughout a round, throughout a turn. Whereas other games like this, okay, think of like a deck builder, right? You just shuffle your cards and you just draw blinds. Giving you the choice, though, of which dice you're drawing is huge, and it adds a lot of meaningful decisions to it. And there's not always a right choice, right?
Yeah.
Like it just depends. It really just depends. Really, really solid.
Well, and we've mentioned it kind of throughout, but it is worth highlighting the sheer amount of variability in this game. You have 7 different unique card sets, and I know, the very thorough reviewer would have played every single one of them. It didn't happen, but man, there's a lot of possibility there, and you combine that with I'm just saying, you combine that with the 4 different tracks. What?
No, I thought you meant like play every single combination. You mean the presets?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even playing all the presets would have been pretty beefy ahead of a review.
Well, you can't play every single combination outside of the presets.
That's correct. Well, I mean, you could, but it would be...
What is that like? Is that like 7?
Millions?
Yeah.
Millions. I mean, especially when you combine it with play all of the combinations on 4 different tracks. So.
Is it factor 7 or 7 factor? 7 factorial? Is
something
that what it would
like that.
be?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Do the math. It's a lot. In any case, and the game says, hey, you can mix and match these on your own too if you want, but you might get some weird stuff that happens.
Let me ask Siri. Let me see if she knows.
Okay. Good luck with that.
Hey Siri. What is 7 factorial?
7 factorial is 5040.
No,
okay,
there's
that doesn't
more than
sound
that.
right.
That doesn't sound right at all.
Is it 7 to the 7th power then?
Maybe? Sean, it's been a long time since I've had to do any sort of decent math.
Hey Siri. What's 7 to the 7th power?
Okay, I found this on the web for what's the cat with 7 to the 7th power.
Oh, forget it, Siri. Come on, Siri. Come on. Right. I don't know. It's somewhere between 5,040 and several million.
It's a lot. It's a lot, is the bottom line. In any case, I think the game has to get a good amount of credit for that. I can't promise every combination is going to work well, but it does give you combinations, a good amount of them that definitely do. So, yeah, super well done, and a ton of content in this box for what is at its core, as you mentioned, a very simple system.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Theme? Does it feel like a tense race to you?
Well, yeah. I mean, it does. It was very tense, especially as you're falling farther and farther behind, which happened in my very first game. Oh man, I got smoked in that first game. I was busting like a fool. So much busting. I mean, it's a weird theme, right? Because everything's cubed. All these little cube animals and cube cheese. Is there anything that's not an animal besides the cheese?
I think they're all animals besides the cheese.
They're all animals and then cheese. That's weird. That's very weird.
It is. Yeah, it's at its foundation a weird game in that way. And you have like battle crabs, you have llamas. I don't know. There's a whole mix of things.
It's a weird theme. Can we slap some other theme on this? I mean, ultimately it's a racing game, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, you could probably slap some other theme on this.
Star Wars pod racing?
Yeah, why not? And
it'd be a little weird, though, having the pod like spin around in the corner for a while before then boosting off across the line. I don't know.
Well, otherwise, what are they doing? They're just like picking daisies?
Yeah, daisy picking pods. I don't know. The point being, it doesn't help or hurt the game. The game certainly, as it plays, feels like it fits, or it's arguably even a little bit deeper than the theme might appear. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Gil did have a couple of thoughts on this one. Sylvain Lacroix said, first of all, don't let the cover fool you because from a distance it looks like SpongeBob. AG and John D. Clare have been doing some solid games, and Cubitos continues the trend. It blends dice pooling and push your luck with a race theme that's pretty amusing. Could have been a bag builder, but it would have maybe been a tad too random. In the end, I really enjoyed the combos you can do with the dice, and the general aesthetic of the game reminds me a bit of Automobile, a race bag builder that was pretty good. I would give a very solid 4.
Did you play Automobile?
I feel like I might have, but I can't guarantee it.
I liked it. I liked it quite a bit, but I like Cubitos more.
Okay.
And then BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, Cubitos is the best racing game I've played in a while. John D. Clare is a master at dice and engine building, and Cubitos was a major hit in our house. We played every scenario in the book in the first week alone. I want more Cubitos. Solid 5, and certainly in position for Gumbo Game of the Year. Whew.
Ooh.
Long praise.
High praise. Okay. Well, that leads us to the score. Sean, you want me to go first, or are you going first?
Let me go first, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
because
go for it.
I kind of have a question to pose to you.
Yeah.
And it's based on this. This reminded me a lot in terms of feel to Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in both games, you have a pool of components. In Quacks, you have the ingredient chips in your bag. Here you have a pool of dice. These dice slash chips, ingredient chips, they have variable powers based on which set you're playing. So you have that different variability and different effects each game, different interactions, the way they all work together. And then there's also a bit of a race, it feels like, to Quacks. I mean, obviously you're playing a set number of rounds, but in a lot of ways, you're still kind of seeing how quickly you can get, spiral around to the outer end of your cauldron. But then ultimately, there's also that push your luck element, right? In Cubitos, you're continuing to roll as much as you can, and you're worried, oh man, I've only got 4 dice left, and what are the odds that I'm going to roll at least one face? And then same with Quacks, where you've got once you exceed 7-point value worth of the cherry blossom chips, you bust. So it was very reminiscent of that to me, and I had very similar feelings playing this game as I do Quacks at Quedlinburg. And Quacks has since risen to a 6 since we reviewed it and did the double take. I love Quacks. It gets played quite a bit pre-COVID at Empire Board Game Library during Duke's Dice Game Night. Here at the house, it gets played on a fairly regular basis. And so for me, and maybe this comparison isn't there for you at all, but for me, I felt that strong comparison. And so the question for me is, am I going to pull this out over Quacks? And that's what I'm struggling with.
Okay.
Because I think Quacks is the better game, hands down. But I still like this quite a bit, and I'm just struggling, especially for someone who has been aggressively culling his collection. I'm like, do I need both? Like, is there going to be a point in time where I want to roll dice instead of pulling chips from a bag? And I'll be honest, there is something more satisfying about rolling dice. I like rolling big chunks of dice. That's why I'm playing Warhammer 40K, because you're rolling like 20 dice at a time. And that's very satisfying. I'm not going to lie about that. I think Sean from 5 years ago absolutely would have been like, yes, have both in the collection. But that was also at a time period when, we had people over twice a week to play games. I mean, it's certainly something. If someone said, hey, at Empire, once things are back up and running, hey, let's play Cubitos, I'm not going to sit there and be like, no, let's play Quacks. Quacks is the better game. I'm not going to say that. Maybe like, yeah, let's play Cubitos. It's totally fun. It's pretty sweet. But I don't know. So that's something I'm kind of struggling with that might affect my, yeah, I think it affects my score. I think it does affect my score. So we rate everything on a 6-point scale. 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. So this is going to be a 4 or a 5. 4, a good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. There's no way it's below a 4. No way. 5, a great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. I feel like in a world without Quacks of Quedlinburg, I would give this a 5, a very solid 5. But the fact that I don't know how many times I'm going to go to this game probably drops it to a 4. So good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. You know, we've done this before where it's like, look, we can't, I mean, we could, in theory, we could review this in a vacuum, but I think it's important for us to say, for people who have limited budgets, limited space, you know, I don't need to own 4 types of a game that scratch a similar itch anymore. Like, I definitely felt like I did back in the day. And if that's still you, hey, that's cool. That's totally cool. And I kind of miss that. I do kind of miss that. But also, especially during COVID, it's been harder, at least for me, to get games to the table. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand. It was very reminiscent to me of Quacks. And I think just Quacks is the better game. Where do you come on that Quacks comparison, Alex?
So I think it's a valid comparison, and I was parsing this out in my mind because I'm on the opposite side of that decision point. I've played some Quacks, and Abby really enjoyed Quacks, and I think Quacks is a really good game, but I enjoyed this game far more than I enjoyed Quacks.
Cool.
So
cool.
For me, the comparison that came to my mind is Quacks is Dominion, and this game, Cubitos, is Clank. And what I mean by that is they both have a similar core, right? You have that core of pool building, of press your luck, of trying to get together different combos, variable abilities depending on the mix of things you have in the pot. And then you have Cubitos, which has that, but also has 4 different racetracks and has that physical component and has the decisions of where you are on the board, and the dice themselves are just more satisfying, and it feels like there's more flavor that I care about. I don't know. It's more of a robust game to me than something like Quacks is.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
And it's weird. I think it is more robust. I think it is speaking of Cubitos, I think it is a little bit more complicated than Quacks. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that I'm preferring the lighter game, the simpler game, and you're preferring the more robust game. That's weird. That's a weird thing to say.
Well, but it comes down to thematics, right? For all of the pros of Quacks, and there's a delightful element to any push your luck game of draw until you bust, and this play simultaneously kind of thing that both games have. There's just something more delightful in the theme of the race. The sheer number of different abilities and different racetracks give games a different feel, and the whole presentation of this, to me, is just way more engaging than Quacks. So I think both are really solid games, and if someone prefers Quacks over this, I get it. Quacks has developed a well-earned reputation, but to me, I like this game far better. And I don't think it has anything to do with complexity. I think it has to do with theme and feel.
Okay.
So, yeah. So,
well, hey,
anyway,
what are you giving it?
My score. So broadly speaking, this game's awesome. I think I had a couple of minor rocky moments during setup and figuring out how different rules played together, but by and large, I really like this game. I really like the pool building. I love the possibility of the different abilities. I love the decision points of do I take a straightforward race? Do I take this route? What die do I add? It's not always so obvious. What dice do I draw? There are a lot of interesting little decisions, and they're all made simultaneously, so it all flows well. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It comes beautifully packaged. And whenever I have this many positives to say without a negative, I'm leaning more towards a 6 than anything, Sean. All-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. I think this game is absolutely worth it. It does so many things so well. Everyone starts from the same place, but you get to places that feel unique and different. You have that spot on the board that kind of reminds you of how far ahead someone is or isn't. You can kind of take sneaky little routes. You have photo finishes. It's a beautifully designed game, and everything just seems to work together really well. I may mellow on this slightly over the next year, but as soon as we get to conventions, I really want to play in-person games of this more. Even playing in-person, and we didn't really talk about this thoroughly, but it played about as well at 2 as it did 4. I guess I've sort of talked about it. In any case, I think this is brilliant. It's my favorite design from this designer, and I think it's well worth your time if any of this resonated with you. So yeah, for me, it's a 6, and maybe lower end of a 6. I don't know if it would be fully in my top 10, but I would certainly be considering it.
Well, and I think, Alex, it's interesting you say that, because I think for the most part, there's more of a narrative experience with this game than Quacks by a wide margin. I mean, I think you're right. I think there's going to be more memorable moments, more stories that are going to come from playing Cubitos over Quacks. So I agree with that. And it could be that this, for that reason, maybe it is more accessible than Quacks in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, it was, even though it's a more complex game. I agree with you there. Despite that, I still found it, again, supremely engaging. So, no regrets on the score. I think it deserves it.
Cool.
There you go. Well, that'll do it for our review of Cubitos. Sean with a 4, a high end of a 4, but a 4 nonetheless. And I give this one a solid 6.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
Next up, the Dukes Double Take. We're looking back at episode 221, appropriately entitled Lockdown, because this was right as we were heading into lockdown, and COVID-19 had become very much a real thing, and a presence in everyone's life. We were reviewing Glen Moore II, and Sean, you listened to this episode, so give us the recap. What did we give it at the time?
Wow, Alex, talk about an episode full of 6s. You gave this game a 6. You said that this was one of the best games that you had played in a long time. If you recall, Glen Moore II had a bunch of these expansion models. You said you loved the expansions. You said that this game scratched a ton of itches, although you could admit it wasn't a perfect game. I gave this a high 4. I said I like this game a lot. There were a lot of tense moments in the game. I felt stressed out all the time playing it, which for me, that's a good thing because I'm a weirdo. On the downside, I said, I really think at 4 players is when you have the most interesting and dynamic scoring. But I felt at 4 players, it also kind of would wear out its welcome. And you kind of echoed that same dichotomy a little bit too. But like I said, overall, you were much more enthused about it than I was. And then just as a reminder, this Glen Moore II, this is a tableau building game where you are a Scottish clans person building out your little fiefdom or whatever by collecting these various tiles that produce certain things and can turn things into other things. And you're doing this on a track board where you're jumping ahead to pick up the tile that you want. And it's one of those games where if you are still behind people on the track, you keep going as much as you want until you're no longer last. So Alex, I did not remember that you gave this a 6. Did you remember you gave this a 6?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this game was amazing. And if we hadn't gone into lockdown at the time, I think would have absolutely played it another time or two, and hopefully still will, because I found this one absolutely brilliant and have fond memories of it, but have not played it since, not because of anything to do with the game.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Well, we played it with Jared. It was Jared's copy, and he has since moved out of state. So that's a bummer. I did want to play more of the expansion modules. We only got to play a handful of them. And I was interested in playing more. And man, was this? So this would have, we went right into lockdown after that, huh?
Hence the name of the episode.
Whew.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like the double take is going to get super depressing from here on out.
Yeah, at least for the next year, right? And then it might lighten up. Who knows? Yeah. Yep.
Any guild thoughts, Alex, on Glen Moore II?
Yeah, there were 2 of them. One from Sylvain Lacroix, who said, I didn't have a chance to play this a lot, but it's already a favorite of mine. Haven't played the first one, but let me tell you that this version is amazing. I love the time aspect, the fact that the last on the track plays a la Patchwork There's so many chronicles to explore. I only feel like I touched the tip of the iceberg. This is a high 5, and with a few more plays, might be upgraded into a 6. Yeah, it made that much of an impression on me.
Wow. And then Jonas Resting Jepson says, I have played Glen Moore once, and I really digged it. However, unpacking the game and sorting all of the chronicles was a 2-hour job, so I'm not buying it unless I can get it on the secondhand markets.
This might be a 6, and I don't own all my 6s. This might be a 6 I'm least likely to own, just because of the size factor and sheer amount of stuff that comes in that box, which is a positive, but also overwhelming in its own way. So.
Yeah, I definitely would have liked to have played more of this, and who knows, some point in the future.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That'll do it for the. Oh yeah, we didn't give a retake score, Sean. What's your retake?
I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it at a. That's what the whole segment's name.
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
I'm gonna keep it at a high 4. I mean, it's a very solid game, a very solid Euro. I think the base game is, a good little graduated game to teach maybe not like a brand new gamer, but yeah, I think it's solid. And there's a ton going on there for for more experienced gamers too.
Awesome. I'm keeping this at a 6. No reason to change it. I'm looking forward to hopefully playing it more now that things are opening up. I don't know when that'll be, but game is fantastic and well worth your time if you haven't tried it. So there you go. That'll do it for the Duke's Double Take. A 6 in the past and a 6 in the present for me, and a 4 in the past and a 4 in the present for Sean. Finally, before we wrap things up, the best of the rest. And we had a lot of good episode name suggestions this time around, Sean. This was a strong week. There was a clear winner, I think, for us, but a strong group of other ones in the mix. So,
100%.
Yeah, I'll lead us off with this one. King Splendor with Whiskey Business, referencing the risks you take in any kind of a press your luck game with the whiskey that comes in Glen Moore II.
And then Josh in Gurr suggested Cubitos. Cubitos. I think it's Cubitos.
Yes.
So you gotta have it. You gotta have the dose in there. So kind of mixing the Cubitos, Cubitos, with dose, DOS. The dose for Glen Moore II.
Nice name.
As you know, a lot of Scottish people speak Spanish.
Ay Dios mío. All right, next up, the name father, Steve O'Rourke, with Down the Stretch They Come. Kind of a Scottish take on Down the Stretch They Come. He also suggested an alternate name, Dune Force, which, not bad either. So there was that. There was also a lovely SNL reference that didn't quite make the cut, but I hadn't seen that skip before, and that's a classic. Anyway, go on the guild if you want to see that. So.
And then Jonas Reston Jepson suggested Scotsman SquarePants, because again, if you go check out the cover of Cubitos, it looks like a weird amalgamation of cheese and SpongeBob SquarePants, and then the Scotsman thrown in there. Scotsman SquarePants. Good job, Jonas.
And then Paul G with 500 die and 500 more, but this is a Proclaimer's take, and I have a request to sing it, so... And I would roll 500 die, and I would roll 500 more, just to be the man who rolled 1,000 die to fall down at your door.
La-di-da-da,
Da-da-da,
la-di-da-da,
da-da-da.
la-di-da-da-da-da-da-da.
So I'm 50% sure I've told this story in the podcast before, Sean, but I'm going to tell it again anyway, just in case. Way back when I was in high school, I had a radio show that I did. They gave it was basically called the original Ground Zero Radio because it was named Ground Zero Radio before 9/11 occurred. This is a radio thing in Santa Fe. I don't think it's on the air anymore, but basically it was a 2-hour slot on KSFR, and it was how I started broadcasting. And I did an all remix show once and found all sorts of weird covers and remixes and all sorts of fun things. And then I introduced this song, I Would Walk 500 Miles, and said, it's the weird Scottish remix or cover of of I Would Walk 500 Miles.
What?
Yep. I didn't realize it was the original. And someone called into the station and said, "You dummy, that's the original. You're stupid." And I was stupid. But yeah, that's my connection with the song, is thinking at one point this was a cover of a song that didn't have this accent included. So
I'm so I'm okay.
It was stupidity. It was dumb.
Well,
yeah, I don't know how to explain it other than that, Sean.
Well, Brett Mowers really wanted that to be sung, so
you got your wish, Brett.
There you go. All right. Well, another one in the bag. We're inching closer and closer, Alex, to the big 250. But that will do it for today. This has been episode 247. Thanks again to Jimmy DM90 for naming this Blockness monster. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on March 25th, 2021. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesofDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Game Toppers and Arcane Wonders. You can learn more about Arcane Wonders fine games at ArcaneWonders.com and find out all you need to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.